Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Madison makes a desperate deal with Allison in order to save Chelsea, setting in motion a terrifying chain of events that no one can easily control. The moment this choice is laid bare, the air grows heavy with the knowledge that what happens next could mean the difference between salvation and ruin. It is not a simple bargain between enemies but a dangerous surrender that touches on jealousy, obsession, and twisted desires that Allison feeds on with cruel delight. The story begins when Jacob, the reluctant strategist caught in the middle of this escalating nightmare, finally tracks down a location where Chelsea and Allison are being held. Jacob has been following fragments of leads for days, piecing together clues left like breadcrumbs in the shadows, and finally his persistence pays off. Alongside him, Bill brings both skepticism and determination, wary of Jacob's instincts but unwilling to let Allison's dangerous game continue unchecked. At first, the rescue seems straightforward in theory: find the hideout, breach it, extract Chelsea, and end Allison's rampage. Yet, reality turns far darker when Allison responds to their attempt to negotiate by revealing her own cruel terms. She demands a trade, one that shakes Madison to her core. Madison is the only one she wants as a replacement hostage. As if the drama itself is not enough unless she has the chance to torment the bonds of loyalty and love. Madison is given a choice that no one should ever face, but her resolve hardens, driven by an unwillingness to watch Chelsea suffer alone. Chelsea screams in protest, her voice raw with terror, begging Madison not to accept such a suicidal bargain. Her pleas cut through the tense atmosphere. Yet Allison listens only with a twisted smirk. The villainess is delighted by this unfolding display, savoring the torment as if it were the sweetest melody. Allison reveals her true hunger no simply to control Chelsea, but to exploit the love Chelsea shares with Madison. To Allison, there is nothing more delicious than witnessing the slow unraveling of affection under the weight of impossible decisions. She thrives on the idea of forcing Chelsea and Madison to sacrifice themselves for one another, pushing them both toward ruin with each choice they attempt to make. It is not enough to merely win. Allison wants to turn their love into a weapon, sharpened by pain and regret. In her view, it is proof of her power that she can reduce devotion into despair. And while Chelsea fights against this manipulation, Madison, trembling yet resolute, steps forward, proving she is willing to endure Allison's cruelty if it means protecting the woman she loves. The cruel irony comes swiftly. After Madison agrees to the trade, Allison binds her without hesitation, yet refuses to release Chelsea. The terms of the agreement disintegrate instantly, proving Allison's promises are worth nothing. Both women now find themselves trapped, bound, and helpless at the mercy of a captor who delights in betrayal. Chelsea's eyes flood with horror as she realizes her worst fears are true. Madison has been caught in the same snare, and now neither of them has been spared. Allison paces like a predator savoring the moment before the kill, her eyes flickering between them with satisfaction. This is more than victory to her, it is an affirmation of her dominance, the cruel reassurance that no matter what bonds others share, she alone controls their fate. The tension does not remain unnoticed by Jacob and Bill, who watch the situation spiral further out of control. They realize, with gnawing dread, that Allison has no intention of keeping her word, no matter the concessions made. The only certainty is bloodshed unless they intervene. But intervention must be calculated. Jacob knows that a reckless move could trigger Allison to lash out and kill Chelsea or Madison in a fit of rage. The challenge now is to outwit someone whose unpredictability is her greatest weapon. He begins to consider new tactics, recognizing that brute force alone will not topple Allison. Instead, he needs precision, support, and an element of deception strong enough to catch her off guard. Meanwhile, Allison escalates her torment, delighting in forcing Madison and Chelsea into verbal confrontations. She demands they choose who deserves to live, as if survival itself could be decided by debate. She toys with their emotions, whispering venomous words that make Chelsea tremble and Madison grit her teeth in anger. To Allison, this is a game of control, a theater where pain is the currency of entertainment. The captives cling desperately to one another with words of loyalty and sacrifice, refusing to give Allison the satisfaction of choosing self-preservation. Madison insists that Chelsea must live, while Chelsea insists the same of Madison, their voices weaving a tragic duet of defiance. This, in turn, sparks Allison's jealousy because in their refusal to abandon each other, she sees a love she cannot possess or replicate. It gnaws at her, fueling her cruelty further. For Allison, the thought of being excluded from such devotion is unbearable, so she twists her rage into schemes meant to fracture the bond. Jacob, observing from the shadows, feels time slipping away. He recalls the countless warnings from Bill about not underestimating Allison, and now he fully understands. Allison is not merely holding two women hostage, she is orchestrating a spectacle designed to break spirits. The longer this continues, the more dangerous it becomes. Jacob makes a silent vow that he will not allow Allison's twisted hunger to claim victory. He knows he must find someone willing to support his plan to restrain Allison swiftly and decisively, before her manipulation escalates into irreversible tragedy. Yet as much as Jacob plans, Allison grows more unpredictable. She revels in keeping her enemies off balance, ensuring that no one can guess her next move. One moment she laughs in mockery, the next she delivers threats with bone-chilling sincerity. The captives are forced to navigate her shifting moods with care, fearing that even a wrong glance could provoke violence. Madison, despite her binds, tries to steady Chelsea with quiet reassurances. Her voice carries a calmness that belies her own fear, an attempt to shield Chelsea from despair. In those small whispers of love and strength, Chelsea finds the will to resist Allison's taunts. But Allison notices this, and her irritation deepens. She cannot tolerate being ignored in her own theater of torment. To her, attention is power, and when Madison diverts it back to Chelsea, it undermines her sense of control. The story widens beyond the walls of this hideout. Jacob and Bill begin reaching out to trusted contacts, people who have faced chaos before and know how to act with precision under pressure. Jacob explains that Allison must be subdued with minimal risk to the captives. It is not simply about capturing her, it is about doing so before she can inflict irreversible damage. Each conversation Jacob has tightens the net, slowly bringing more allies into the fold, yet he remains haunted by the image of Madison and Chelsea bound, vulnerable, and enduring Allison's cruelty with fading strength. Time is running short, and every delay feels like betrayal. As preparations move forward, Allison escalates again. She forces Chelsea and Madison to sit across from each other, insisting they speak aloud every fear they hold about the other's fate. It is a psychological assault meant to strip away their strength. Chelsea cries openly, her words breaking under the weight of terror, while Madison fights to stay composed even as her own heart fractures. Their suffering becomes fuel for Allison's obsession, a cycle she does not want to end. She confesses in a rare moment of raw honesty that she envies the love they share. To her, it is an unbearable reminder of everything she cannot have. Rather than admit her loneliness, she cloaks it in cruelty, convincing herself that if she can destroy their bond, she will no longer feel the sting of exclusion. Yet deep within her, the envy festers like an open wound, making her more volatile than ever. Jacob senses this volatility can be used against her. He begins devising a plan that capitalizes on Allison's need for attention and validation. If they can create a distraction that draws her focus away from the captives, even for a moment, they might find the opportunity to strike. But there is no room for error. A single misstep could end in Chelsea or Madison's death. Bill voices doubts, warning that Allison's unpredictability makes any plan unstable, but Jacob refuses to surrender. He sees no other choice. Allowing Allison's cruelty to continue unchecked is not an option. Every second matters, and the lives of Chelsea and Madison hang in the balance. As night falls, the air grows colder, and inside the hideout, the tension sharpens to a knife's edge. Allison prowls the room like a restless predator, her voice alternating between soft whispers and shrill commands. Madison's wrists ache against the ropes, yet she refuses to show weakness. Chelsea leans against her, drawing strength from the faintest contact. In their silence, they communicate what words cannot, an unbroken promise to endure, no matter how much Allison tries to fracture them. This silent defiance enrages Allison further, pushing her closer to the brink of violence. She grabs a weapon, brandishing it with a flourish, threatening to end their lives in an instant if they fail to give her the response she craves. Chelsea gasps in terror, but Madison remains steady, her eyes locked on Allison with a mix of fury and resolve. It is in that moment that Jacob knows action cannot be delayed any longer. He signals to Bill and their allies, ready to put the plan into motion. Yet the outcome is anything but certain. The danger is immense, and the stakes have never been higher. The confrontation that looms ahead will decide not only the fate of Chelsea and Madison but also whether Allison's reign of terror can finally be broken. And as the walls close in, one thing becomes clear: the battle has only just begun. The night is heavy with silence, broken only by the nervous breath of captives and the measured pacing of their tormentor. Allison grips her weapon tightly, her eyes flashing with the unstable light of someone who thrives on control yet teeters dangerously close to losing it. Chelsea and Madison sit bound, their bodies trembling, though their resolve remains intact. They whisper words of love when Allison's back is turned, not for comfort alone but as defiance, a declaration that their bond will not be shattered. It enrages her, and with every passing minute, she grows more reckless. Jacob crouches outside, hidden in the shadows with Bill close at his side. The plan they have forged is fragile, a structure built from instinct and desperation. Jacob knows that if he miscalculates, the lives inside could be lost within seconds. Still, he trusts his judgment, and his focus sharpens with the gravity of the moment. Bill mutters his doubts but steadies his resolve, ready to follow Jacob into the storm. They are not heroes, but they are all that stand between Allison's madness and the women trapped in her grasp. Inside, Allison circles her captives, her voice turning soft, almost coaxing, as she tells Chelsea and Madison to imagine their future. She paints a picture of survival but twists it until the only way forward is through sacrifice. She asks who will volunteer to die first, her tone cruelly playful, as if she were inviting them to a game. Chelsea sobs quietly, shaking her head, while Madison stares at Allison with unflinching defiance. This refusal to bend to her will scratches deep against Allison's pride. She raises her weapon higher, pointing it at Madison with sudden intensity, and Chelsea screams for her to stop. The sound slices through the night, reaching Jacob's ears and spurring him to act. Jacob signals to Bill, and they move with precision. The door creaks as it's pushed open, but Allison is sharp, her instincts like a predator's. She spins, weapon raised, her face alight with fury. For a heartbeat, the room holds its breath, balanced on the edge of disaster. Then chaos erupts. Bill lunges forward, tackling Allison before she can strike, the weapon clattering to the ground. The fight is brutal, Allison thrashing like a wild animal, her strength fueled by rage. Jacob rushes to the captives, working quickly to loosen their binds, whispering reassurances even as his hands shake with urgency. But Allison is not so easily subdued. She twists from Bill's grasp, grabbing a shard of broken glass and slashing wildly. The cut grazes Bill's arm, blood spilling, but he holds her back, grimacing through the pain. Madison, finally free, throws herself between Allison and Chelsea, shielding her with her own body. The moment crystallizes into raw desperation, two forces clashing not just with strength, but with love and obsession, protection and destruction. Jacob shouts for Bill to hold her steady, and with a final surge, Bill pins Allison against the wall. Jacob seizes the opportunity, pressing restraints around her wrists, locking them tight despite her frantic thrashing. At last, the weapon is out of reach, her movements limited, though her voice still spits venom. She screams at Chelsea and Madison, accusing them of betrayal, of stealing the love that should have been hers. Her words drip with rage and bitterness, but her body is finally bound, her control broken. Chelsea collapses into Madison's arms, sobbing with relief. Madison holds her tightly, whispering that it's over, though her own body shakes with the aftershock of terror. Jacob stands nearby, his chest heaving, the reality of what they have just survived pressing heavy on his shoulders. Bill leans against the wall, clutching his bleeding arm but forcing a grin, his eyes alive with the satisfaction of survival. And yet, the silence that follows is not peaceful. Allison does not stop speaking. Her voice, though restrained, slithers through the room, planting seeds of fear and doubt. She insists this is not the end, that her influence stretches beyond these walls. She warns them that no bond is unbreakable, no rescue complete. Even in defeat, she seeks to poison their relief. Madison glares at her, refusing to let the words take root, but Chelsea trembles, haunted by the lingering echo of Allison's cruelty. Jacob insists they move quickly, urging everyone out before Allison finds another way to strike. They bind her securely and drag her from the hideout, the night air cold against their sweat-soaked skin. The journey back is tense, the weight of survival pressing heavy, yet every step is a reminder of their narrow escape. Chelsea clings to Madison, unwilling to let go, while Bill cracks grim jokes to distract from the pain in his arm. Jacob remains silent, lost in thought, his mind replaying every moment of the confrontation. Back in the safety of their temporary refuge, the aftermath settles in. Chelsea cannot stop shaking, her tears spilling freely, but Madison stays by her side, grounding her with steady words. Bill nurses his wound, refusing to admit how close he came to losing control. Jacob paces, restless, haunted not just by the battle but by the knowledge that Allison's words may yet prove true. Even restrained, even defeated, her shadow lingers. Madison, however, refuses to give Allison that power. She reminds Chelsea that love survived the ordeal, that they endured together despite Allison's every attempt to destroy them. She speaks with conviction, her voice steady, though inside she too feels the tremors of fear. Chelsea looks at her with tear-filled eyes, drawing strength from her certainty, and slowly, the weight of despair begins to lift. Their bond, once tested by fire, emerges stronger, forged in defiance of cruelty. Allison, restrained and under guard, still seethes. She glares at them with burning eyes, her silence heavier than her words. There is no denying her defeat, but in her mind, she clings to the belief that her influence endures. She imagines cracks forming in the bond she envied, telling herself that love cannot withstand the scars she has inflicted. Yet the truth stands against her. Chelsea and Madison, though shaken, refuse to yield. Jacob and Bill discuss what comes next. Allison must be contained, her threat neutralized once and for all. But more than that, they must ensure Chelsea and Madison can begin to heal. The ordeal has left marks too deep for simple reassurances to erase, and Jacob knows recovery will take time. He watches the two women cling to each other, their whispers soft but steady, and feels a rare spark of hope. Perhaps love truly can endure even the darkest storms. The night stretches long, filled with exhaustion and weary peace. Chelsea drifts into sleep, her body curled against Madison's, while Madison stays awake, keeping watch with quiet determination. Jacob sits nearby, his mind heavy but his resolve unbroken. Bill finally allows himself to rest, wincing from his wound but smiling faintly. And in the corner, Allison stirs against her restraints, her eyes gleaming with unspoken fury. She has lost this battle, but her silence promises she has not abandoned the war in her heart. The story lingers there, at the edge of triumph and shadow, where survival has been won but peace remains fragile. The bonds of love have proven stronger than cruelty, but the scars of obsession remain etched across their hearts. Chelsea and Madison cling to one another, Jacob and Bill stand vigilant, and Allison waits, her presence a reminder that darkness does not vanish easily. The future stretches before them, uncertain yet unyielding, shaped by the choices they made when the gates closed in around them. When the dust finally settled, silence was not the relief they had imagined. It was heavy, restless, and untrustworthy. Though Allison had been restrained, her presence was like a storm cloud hovering just above them, ready to break. Chelsea and Madison clung to one another, their love renewed through suffering, yet still fragile. Jacob and Bill kept their guard, but both men knew that the battle had left unseen wounds. Survival was not the same as peace. Days passed, and the small group moved carefully from one hiding place to another, ensuring that Allison remained secure. She spoke rarely now, her silence unnerving in its intensity. When she did speak, Her words were calculated, no longer wild taunts, but quiet reminders of the poison she had sown. "Love cracks under weight," she whispered once, her eyes fixed on Madison. "Wait until the silence grows too loud, and you'll see." Madison didn't respond, but those words burrowed deep, lingering in her mind. Jacob wrestled with the question of what to do with Allison. The authorities were unreliable. She had slipped through official hands before, manipulating systems, exploiting weaknesses. Keeping her locked away themselves was a dangerous burden, yet releasing her was unthinkable. Bill argued for a clean end, blunt and brutal, but Jacob refused. He was tired of blood, tired of cycles that only birthed more violence. Still, the lack of resolution gnawed at them all. Chelsea, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild herself. Nightmares plagued her, visions of Allison's mocking face, of Madison bound and bleeding. She would wake in the dark, gasping for air, only to feel Madison's arms tighten around her. Madison never complained, never faltered, but Jacob noticed the exhaustion in her eyes. Love had been their shield, but love also demanded endurance, and endurance had its limits. The final confrontation came not with screams, but with a quiet inevitability. They had relocated to a more secure site, an abandoned farmhouse far from prying eyes. Allison sat bound in the cellar, her presence haunting every floorboard above. One night, when the others had drifted into uneasy sleep, Jacob descended alone, a lantern in his hand. He crouched before Allison, her face half hidden in shadow, and asked her why. Not the cruel games, not the lies, but the truth that lay beneath all her violence. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, in a voice stripped of venom, she admitted that she had once loved too, and had been left behind. That loss had hollowed her, leaving only envy and rage. Seeing Chelsea and Madison had been like pressing salt into a wound that never healed. She wanted to destroy what she could not have, to break others as she had been broken. Her eyes shone with something almost human than pain, not cruelty. But it was fleeting. The moment Jacob looked too deeply, she smiled again, cold and sharp, hiding behind cruelty like armor. Jacob left her there, but her confession lingered. He returned upstairs, where Madison sat awake, watching over Chelsea's restless sleep. She asked if he believed Allison could change. He didn't answer directly, but his silence was enough. Madison nodded, her expression resolute. "Then we'll change ourselves," she whispered. "We'll live." And so they did. In the days that followed, Jacob arranged for trusted allies to take Allison far away, to a place where her reach could not find them. It was not a perfect solution, but it was the only one that promised safety without feeding the cycle of violence further. Bill grumbled at the risk, but even he understood. Their fight was not only against Allison, but against becoming like her. The departure marked a turning point. Chelsea began to breathe more easily, her nightmares softening as distance grew between them and their tormentor. Madison stayed by her side, but now her smiles carried more light than strain. Together, they began to reclaim the pieces of themselves that had been fractured. Jacob and Bill remained close, silent guardians, yet with each passing day the air grew lighter, the shadows thinner. One evening, as the sun sank over the horizon, painting the sky in bruised hues of purple and gold, the four of them sat outside the farmhouse. Chelsea leaned against Madison, her hand entwined tightly with hers. Bill cracked jokes about leaving farm life behind, and Jacob allowed himself a rare laugh. For the first time in what felt like years, the sound didn't feel out of place. The ending was not clean, nor was it absolute. Allison's shadow would always linger, a scar on their memories, a reminder of how fragile peace can be. But scars did not mean weakness, they meant survival. They meant strength. Chelsea and Madison knew this in their bones, their love stronger not because it had been untouched, but because it had been tested and endured. Jacob watched them quietly, knowing their story was not his to tell, but feeling a quiet pride nonetheless. They had faced the gates of despair and stepped beyond them, carrying one another into a future where cruelty no longer ruled. And though the future was uncertain, it was theirs, written not by Allison's hand, but by their own. In the hush of that twilight, with the air calm and the world seemingly at peace, Madison whispered to Chelsea, "We're still here." Chelsea smiled, her eyes wet but shining, and replied, "And will stay." For the first time in a long while, it felt true.